The afternoon Ethan Parker went to his friend Jake Mitchell's house felt ordinary, yet it carried a strange pull from the moment he parked outside. He was only there to return a jacket Jake had left in his car, nothing more, nothing important. The house stood quiet under a pale sky, leaves scattered across the driveway, the kind of calm that made even small sounds feel loud. When Ethan rang the bell, he expected Jake to open the door, maybe make a joke, maybe rush him away. Instead, the door opened slowly, and Jake's mother, Laura Mitchell, stood there with a polite but tired smile. She looked surprised to see him, as if visitors were rare these days. She told him Jake had stepped out for a while, her voice gentle but distant, and for a moment Ethan thought about leaving the jacket on the porch and going home. But before he could speak, Laura hesitated, then asked if he could help her move a few boxes from the garage. She said it casually, yet something in her tone felt careful, almost like she was asking for more than just help. Ethan agreed without thinking, stepping inside the house that suddenly felt too quiet for a place that once held laughter and noise. The air smelled faintly of coffee and old books, and the walls seemed to hold memories that hadn't been touched in a long time. As they walked toward the garage, Laura explained that she was trying to clean and organize, saying the house felt too big lately, though she didn't explain why. Ethan didn't ask. He followed her, noticing how she moved slowly, as if each step carried weight. In the garage, sunlight slipped through a dusty window, lighting up stacked boxes labeled with years and forgotten plans. Laura pointed to a few boxes and joked lightly that she couldn't lift them on her own anymore. Ethan smiled and picked one up easily, feeling awkward but willing. As they worked, there was little talk. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy, filled with things neither of them named. At one point, their hands brushed while reaching for the same box, and the touch lasted only a second, but it felt longer in Ethan's chest. Laura pulled her hand back quickly, clearing her throat, and Ethan looked away, embarrassed by how aware he suddenly felt. To break the moment, Laura said, almost softly, "I'll pretend you're just helping me," as if the words mattered more than the task itself. Ethan nodded, though he didn't fully understand why the sentence stayed with him. They continued moving boxes, the sound of cardboard sliding across concrete filling the space. Laura mentioned that Jake had been busy lately, that life felt different now, quieter. Ethan listened, sensing loneliness beneath her calm words. He realized then that Laura wasn't just asking for physical help, she wanted company, a break from the silence that followed her everywhere. When the boxes were finally stacked, Ethan wiped his hands and said he should leave. Laura thanked him, her smile warmer this time, and walked him to the door. She didn't rush to close it after he stepped outside. Instead, she stood there, watching him walk down the steps, her expression unreadable but soft. Ethan felt a strange tightness in his chest as he reached his car, glancing back once to see her still there, framed by the doorway. He waved, she waved back, and then the door closed gently. As Ethan drove away, the quiet house stayed in his thoughts. He couldn't explain why such a small moment felt so important, or why Laura's words echoed in his mind. He told himself it meant nothing, that he had only helped a friend's mother with a simple task. Yet deep down, he sensed that something had begun, something quiet and fragile, and he didn't know where it would lead or how to stop it. After that first afternoon, Ethan told himself he would not go back to the Mitchell house unless Jake was there, yet days later he found himself driving down the same street again, using small excuses that sounded reasonable in his head. Jake had asked him to drop off a notebook, then later to help with a broken chair, and each time Laura opened the door with the same gentle surprise, as if she had not expected anyone to remember her house still existed. The visit stayed simple at first, short and polite, but something invisible began to stretch between them. Laura started offering coffee, asking about Ethan's classes, his plans, the kind of future he imagined for himself. Ethan answered honestly, feeling strangely calm around her, like he didn't need to impress anyone. Laura listened closely, not interrupting, her eyes warm yet tired, and Ethan noticed how rare it seemed for someone to truly listen to her in return. The house no longer felt as silent when he was there, and Laura found herself waiting for the sound of a car in the driveway more than she wanted to admit. One evening, Jake was running late, and Laura asked Ethan to wait inside instead of standing on the porch. Rain began to fall outside, light at first, then steady, trapping them in a quiet moment neither had planned. Laura made tea, her hands steady but her thoughts racing, and they sat at opposite ends of the kitchen table, the space between them filled with unspoken things. The talk drifted away from casual topics and into softer places, memories of choices that did not work out, of dreams set aside for responsibility, of loneliness that came quietly rather than loudly. Laura admitted she had not expected her life to feel so empty after everything she had given to others, and Ethan surprised himself by saying he understood more than people thought. There was no confession, no line crossed, only a shared understanding that felt both comforting and dangerous. When the rain finally slowed, Ethan stood to leave, sensing that staying longer would make things harder. Laura walked him to the door again, her voice barely above a whisper when she said, "We'll pretend you're just helping me," the same words as before, but this time they carried weight, like a shield she was holding up to protect them both. Ethan nodded, knowing that pretending was the only way to keep things safe, even as his heart disagreed. Over the next weeks, he began to pull back, answering messages slower, finding reasons to be busy, afraid that his feelings were growing faster than his sense. Laura noticed immediately, the absence louder than his presence had ever been. She told herself it was for the best, that she had no right to expect anything from him, yet the quiet returned with a sharpness that hurt more than before. When Ethan finally came by again to pick up Jake, the tension was clear the moment Laura opened the door. She did not smile right away. She asked him why he had disappeared, not accusing, just honest. Ethan struggled for words, then admitted he did not trust himself to keep things simple. Laura looked away, her eyes shining, and said she had spent her whole life being careful, and for a short time she had allowed herself to feel seen again. The truth settled between them, heavy but clean. They did not move closer. They did not touch. They simply stood there, facing what could never be. Ethan said he could not be that person in her life, and Laura agreed, even though it hurt. When Jake finally arrived, laughing and unaware, both Laura and Ethan had already decided something important without saying it out loud. That night, alone in their separate spaces, they both felt the same ache, knowing that sometimes the hardest choice is the right one, and that pretending had been a way to survive feelings neither of them had planned for but would never fully forget. Ethan tried to move on after that honest moment, telling himself that distance would slowly quiet his thoughts, but feelings do not fade on command, and every ordinary day seemed to carry a reminder of Laura in small, unexpected ways. He focused on classes, work, friends, anything that kept him busy, yet at night his mind returned to the quiet kitchen, the soft honesty in her voice, the look in her eyes that had asked for nothing but understanding. Laura, on the other hand, returned to her routines with careful discipline, waking early, going to work at the library, keeping her days full so the silence at home would not speak too loudly. She avoided sitting in the living room where Ethan had once helped fix a lamp, avoided the garage where the boxes still stood stacked neatly, each one a reminder of that first afternoon. She told herself she had done the right thing, that caring sometimes meant stepping back, but loneliness has a way of arguing with logic. Weeks passed with no contact between them except through Jake, who remained completely unaware, talking freely about his plans and problems, never noticing the brief tension when Ethan and Laura were in the same room. The first time they saw each other again after that conversation was unplanned, at a small local fundraiser hosted by the library. Ethan had come to support a friend, not knowing Laura would be there, and when he spotted her across the room, his chest tightened with surprise and something close to relief. Laura noticed him at the same moment, her heart skipping before she could stop it, and for a second neither of them moved. The room buzzed with quiet chatter, yet everything else faded as they met each other's eyes. When they finally spoke, it was polite, brief, almost formal, like strangers carefully choosing safe words. They talked about the event, about Jake, about work, never crossing into deeper ground, yet the effort it took to stay neutral made the moment feel heavier than any argument. When Ethan left early, Laura watched him go with the same stillness she had felt weeks before, realizing that some connections do not disappear just because they are denied. That night, Laura allowed herself to cry, not from regret, but from acceptance, understanding that what she felt was real even if it could never grow. Ethan, driving home, felt the same weight settle in his chest, realizing that maturity was not about avoiding feelings, but about carrying them responsibly. Days later, Jake invited Ethan over again, and this time Ethan agreed, deciding that fear should not control him. When he arrived, Laura greeted him calmly, her smile gentle but guarded, and they shared a brief moment of shared understanding before returning to normal roles. They spoke easily in front of Jake, laughing at small things, acting as they always had, yet underneath the surface both were aware of the careful balance they were holding. Later, when Jake stepped outside to take a call, Laura and Ethan found themselves alone for a moment, the house quiet once more. Laura broke the silence by thanking him for being honest before, saying that clarity, even when painful, was better than confusion. Ethan replied that she had taught him something important about respect and responsibility, lessons he would carry forward. Their words were calm, their voices steady, and there was no longing in their tone, only mutual care. That brief exchange felt like closure, not the end of feeling, but the end of uncertainty. From that point on, they settled into a new rhythm, one built on boundaries and kindness rather than avoidance. Laura focused on rebuilding her life in small ways, joining a book club, reconnecting with friends, allowing herself moments of joy without guilt. Ethan grew as well, becoming more confident in his choices, more aware of the impact his presence could have on others. Time moved forward, smoothing sharp edges, turning intense moments into quiet memories. Though neither of them ever spoke openly about what they had felt, both understood that something meaningful had passed between them, something that did not need to be named to be respected. In choosing distance, they had chosen care over desire, and while the ache never fully vanished, it softened into something manageable, a reminder that sometimes the strongest emotions are the ones that teach us how to let go with grace. Years passed, and life continued its steady, quiet rhythm for both Ethan and Laura, shaping them in ways they hadn't anticipated. Ethan had graduated, moved for work, and built a life that kept him busy, yet the memory of Laura, the soft honesty in her voice, the gentle warmth of her presence, never left him entirely. Laura, too, had continued her path, focusing on her work at the library, volunteering at local events, and nurturing friendships she had set aside during the lonelier years after her divorce. Both had created stability, but there remained a small space in their hearts reserved for moments that had never fully existed, a delicate memory of connection that was theirs alone. One afternoon, by chance, Ethan returned to town, visiting familiar streets, old coffee shops, and the neighborhood where he had spent so many afternoons at Jake's house. The sun was warm, and a light breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers, a quiet reminder of the cycles that life follows. As he walked past the grocery store, he noticed Laura entering, carrying a small bag of groceries, her hair touched with threads of silver, her posture steady yet graceful. Their eyes met immediately, and for an instant, the years fell away, leaving only recognition and the quiet joy of seeing someone who had once mattered deeply. They approached each other cautiously, polite smiles forming naturally, yet neither of them could hide the warmth in their gaze. Laura spoke first, asking about his work and his life, her voice calm but curious, carrying a hint of the familiarity that had always existed between them. Ethan shared updates about his career, friends, and small personal victories, his tone respectful, honest, and free of hesitation. They spoke like old friends, yet beneath the surface, each understood the unspoken history that bound them. The conversation flowed easily, laughter emerging naturally as they reminisced about small, shared memories, moments once insignificant but now tinged with meaning. Laura mentioned Jake, updating Ethan about his adventures, school, and hobbies, while Ethan shared anecdotes about the family he had grown close to over the years. There was no awkwardness, no tension, just the ease of two people who had cared deeply for each other without ever needing to cross lines they knew were untouchable. When it was time to part ways, Laura paused at the door of her car, looking at Ethan with a quiet sincerity. "Thank you," she said softly, "for helping me back then." Her words carried weight, not of longing, but of gratitude and recognition of what had been shared in silence, the unspoken support and understanding that had shaped them both. Ethan nodded, smiling warmly, feeling the same depth of appreciation. You helped me too, he replied, and they both knew it was true, not through actions or confessions, but through the quiet, emotional bond that had never needed validation. As they went their separate ways, the world continued around them, busy and indifferent, yet within them, a sense of closure and peace had settled. The ache of what could have been had softened into something gentle, a memory of connection that was neither painful nor regretful, a reminder of the beauty of moments felt rather than acted upon. Both Ethan and Laura carried on with their lives, aware that some bonds exist not to be claimed, but to teach, to leave a lasting impression on the heart, and to remind us that love and care can thrive even without romance, without possession, in the quiet spaces of mutual respect and understanding. That day, as the sun set and shadows stretched across the familiar streets, they parted with a smile, an acknowledgement that some stories are not meant to unfold fully, yet they remain profound, shaping the people we become, reminding us that sometimes, pretending is not about hiding truth, but about protecting it, and that the deepest connections can exist quietly, remembered, honored, and cherished without ever needing to change the course of life.